for a moment. We're going to head overseas. Let's talk Iran for a moment. State media, they're questioning this report, saying that the morality police had been disbanded. This is coming after earlier reports that the country's attorney general said the controversial morality police would be, quote unquote, abolished amidst ongoing nationwide protests. We also know that Mohammad Jafar Montazeri, who made the statement, is not responsible for overseeing the morality police in his role as attorney general. There has also been no comment or confirmation, and this is an important part of this, from Iran's leadership, President, Interior Ministry, or police as well. After the story broke, I spoke to a protester inside of Iran who disputed the idea that the morality police had been disbanded even before state media did.
It is a gross misinterpretation to say that the morality police have ceased to exist. The way I see it, for now, their focus has merely shifted. The authorities have been too busy trying to crack down on the protests by making political arrests and whatnot. So recently, this has basically been their main priority, as opposed to merely taking in women for improper hijab. The fact that they aren't currently operating as they used to doesn't mean that they've been formally abolished.
And she said protests would, in fact, continue even if the regime made small concessions, because this is about a much bigger picture.
I don't think that the protests will stop. Even if the morality police, or as some in the past have liked to use the euphemism fashion police, were to be legally and formally abolished, that would not dissuade the Iranian public from attaining the higher collective goal that has formed, which targets the core and the essence of the dictatorship we've been living under. With all the murder and bloodshed and arrests and the looming danger of execution for those detained, most us Iranians have grown exponentially angrier and see it as betrayal to go about our usual lives and pretend that nothing's happened. Some recent chants we hear in protests are, "We will not forgive or forget," or like, "We swear on the blood of our compatriots that we will be standing until the very end, and that this is our last message. Our goal is the entirety of this regime."
And therein lies the gray of the black and white of so much of the reporting that has been going on. Let's bring into this conversation Moj Mahdara, founder of the Iranian Diaspora Collective. You also saw her in some of the reporting I did yesterday when it came to kind of the protests that are happening online, helping spread the word of so many of the protesters in Iran across the internet. And Moj is joining us now. Moj, talk to me, because, you know, this has kind of been seen as a very black and white issue, right? You saw kind of the headlines splashed across kind of newspapers this morning saying the abolishment of, right, the morality police. But there was so much gray amidst all of this because no laws really have changed, as that one protester and activist inside of Iran is telling me. Right. And even if there are kind of these incremental changes, i.e. she can walk around without a headscarf on, it doesn't mean they are going to stop, because this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Talk to me. Moj, you're muted.
Muted. My apologies. Thanks for having me back. Important story to be covering today. Look, it is fair to say that the Islamic Republic feels like they are on the ropes at this point in time. It's fair to say the diaspora, the Western audiences, are winning this information war. I think they are looking to fight back. And I think more importantly, they're looking to put out the news of these big general strikes that are happening here later this week, where the Iranian people are calling for 3 days of strikes. That's workers, that's students, that's people across medical fields. And I think these strikes are one of the greatest threats to the Islamic Republic. And I think this is their attempt to squash these stories. It's unfortunate, the story that came out this morning. We're happy to see various different media sources correcting the headlines, pulling down the stories, because this story has no credibility. It's unsubstantiated, and it actually causes it's not helping the protesters on the ground who are calling for not for reform, but for regime change.
I think also kind of one of the distinctions, Moj, that has been made to me personally has been, even if you don't see the vans in the streets, right, because that has been consistently told to me from a lot of women on the ground there, that they're not being taken in as they once were if they're showing hair or showing an ankle, right? It is not because the government has stepped up and said, okay, we accept that change is needed. It is on the backs of these Iranian protesters. It is on the backs of the sacrifices being made by these women every single day. And they are still making sacrifices and risking their lives every day when they walk out of their homes without a headscarf on, in spite of all that is being reported and that we're seeing.
There are over 18,000 political prisoners right now today in Iran. We're talking about 450 some odd people have been murdered. Over 64 of them have been children. So if they're going to release all of these political prisoners, we would consider that. That would be a statement. If they were going to allow families to hold funerals, that would be a statement. But they're not doing that. This is an attempt to squash the news around these general strikes. I think the Islamic Republic knows that as these strikes grow, these protests grow, it becomes more and more dangerous for them, that their power is dwindling. I think the Iranian people are growing in courage. I think the Western audiences are coming to be their partners in terms of communication and how we can support on the other side. But I think this is a big sign that they know that their time is up and that they are on borrowed time at this point.
But how long could that borrowed time last, Moj?
I mean, look, I think you have amazing organizers inside and outside of the country working across many lines, trying to communicate how to push these strikes to the next level, how to get more people on the streets, and how to get the Western audiences, and more importantly, the Western governments involved in a non-military support of regime change. That's what has to happen here. We are dealing with 18,000 people. The amount of sexual violence and the stories of women being brutally raped, gender-based violence, both against men and women, children. We're talking about people as young as 4, 12, 16. This is the work of the UN. This is the work of many nonprofits out there reporting on this. What we need is accurate reporting. We need the voices of the Iranian activists here in the West, the Iranian academics, the people who've been working on these issues for the past 20 some odd years. We need them to have the opportunity to start to come forward, and we need the West to really aid them. But if you see these protesters, they are not scared. They are not backing down. And I think you're going to see big news coming out of Iran over the next few days with these strikes, because these strikes are no small thing, and I think the Islamic Republic is terrified.
We'll keep our eye on it. Moj Mahdara of the Iranian Diaspora Collective. Thank you, Moj. Appreciate you.